Hello everyone! Today we're taking a look at the Radiomaster Zorro. And you're probably seeing a lot of videos about this because this radio was on an embargo. So we weren't allowed to release videos kind of willy-nilly. Now personally, I like that because that gives me a target. So I know what I need to get done and I know how much time I have to do it. I don't have to worry about rushing. I don't have to really worry. I just get to experience the radio. From a viewer standpoint, I think there are pluses and cons. One, you have a whole bunch of perspectives that you can go out and look at. So if you're interested in this particular product, you can see a bunch of videos today and get those perspectives about this particular product. Two is the con. Your viewing on YouTube might be a bit boring today because there'll be a lot more of this from most of the channels that you might watch. But hopefully there's a little bit of flavor out there in order to be able to perk your day up a little bit. So let's start with perking it up with a little bit of flying. I like to put flying in just about every video. I can figure out some loose association to be able to bring it into the video. And this is me just flying around the house, kind of going for a casual fly. And just spending some time with the radio. Of course, I spent some time with it on the computer, but I wasn't highly successful because the two computer simulators that I use, neither one of them recognized the radio, and I could make them partially work. So it looks like we need a game update. My computer itself recognized the device just fine. So I think we need a game style or a game side update. But this also gives you an opportunity to look at, kind of how I fly, which is to pinch. And sometimes that comes across as a little bit of an odd thing to be a pincher and use a gamepad style radio. Now, I'm old enough to where video games weren't around when I was real young, and then as I got to be a teenager, they were around, but they weren't as prevalent as they are today. Our gamepads were very, very boring. They were rectangles with a directional pad and two buttons. I think it had start and pause, or maybe the start button was the pause. What was on the Atari? The original Atari had the joystick and the orange button, but the one after that, was that the Nintendo? Anywho, I didn't have a Nintendo until I got into college. I couldn't afford one. So I didn't grow up playing video games. But if you grew up playing video games, or you're just comfortable playing video games, gamepad style radio might be for you. The only reason I mentioned the gamepad and the thumbing is because I pinch. So if you think you might be a pincher or a thumber, it's possible on a gamepad style radio, whether it's this one or something else. And if you're not actually interested in this product for some reason, I would suggest, if you're looking for a new radio, to look at a different Radiomaster product, which is the Radiomaster TX16. Of course, this is the S. This is the S Max version, so it's all decked out. And I've got the AG01, all CNC metal gimbals, or all metal CNC gimbals. Those gimbals cost more than this radio does, but you can find this radio for probably somewhere around $150. Not this particular version, TX16. And then as you get into the other versions, they start to step up in cost. This is probably one of the most sold radios in quads, I think. It's the one I hear most people talking about, especially those people that have gotten into quads over the last 2 years, say. So if you're not into the Radiomaster Zorro, check out the TX16 from Radiomaster. And when I got this out of the box, the first thing I thought of when I grabbed it and I got it in my hands was, I thought of the X-Lite. And for those of you that have been following the channel for a long time, you know that the X-Lite used to be my daily driver. And you might also be aware that FrSky makes good radios. Their hardware is good. It's reliable. It's solid. It feels right. I don't like what they're doing with their firmware, but their radios seem to be quality construction. They seem to work really well. And that was the same sort of feeling I had when I pulled this out, that it was a premium radio. It wasn't inexpensive. It wasn't budget. It was a nice radio. And that was my first impression, and my kids were right there when I took it out of the box, and so I handed it to them, and of course they don't fly, so they were just like, oh yeah, it's nice, Dad. This radio isn't going to give you the same sort of feeling that you might feel with a radio that is a little less expensive. Nothing wrong with the Jumper T-Lite, and again, those that have been coming to the channel, I've been using this as my daily driver. I actually have two of them, one with Express LRS and one without, so I can separate, my use so I can make them last longer. So obviously, I have an affinity or a bias for gamepad style radios. The other thing that I think people kind of catches their eye is the big screen. And Radiomaster, they did communicate why they chose a larger screen than you might expect. And that's because they're kind of hoping that people who are just flying quads might be interested in this radio. Maybe they fly wings, maybe they fly helicopters, maybe they use it for some other sort of RC purpose and the screen will come in handy. So therefore, a larger screen might fit a wider market of people who are looking at this radio. So just like the X-Lite, here on the back we have short switches. So that helps when you're packing this. They do offer a case that you can buy for this. So the shorter switches are going to have less of a propensity to catch on something when you're packing, whether you just put it in your bag or whether you have the actual box that is made for this particular radio. So you'll have shorter switches. Now that could be a downside if you're used to longer switches, I guess. But for me, having a switch is more comfortable than having a toggle or a button. I have tried several radios with toggles and buttons. I have a difficult time getting it. And if you're looking for momentary switches, it's got that as well. So let's go through the top here. So on the near side switches, we've got 3-position switches. On the back row switches, they're 2-position switches. And they're nice and solid. They're not loose or anything. And then these 2 circles in here, these are our momentary switches. And then we have these turn dials or pots here in the, as you know, say you're gonna trim out your plane or something like that. I suspect it's been a long time since I've done planes, maybe a decade or more. Also on the top we have this Void, which on the X-Lite has an SMA in it. This is the Express LRS edition. I am told that the other editions do have the ability to connect a standard SMA antenna in there. I can't say that for certain. So you might want to check some of those other videos if someone else has got something that's not Express LRS. Also up top, this piece right here, this is our antenna. This is the one that's built in. So we have to kind of stick our fingernails underneath it here. There we go. Pry this up and you see we got a little hinge or joint there and it circles all the way around so you can have it, you know, however you want to have it. And then you can push it back down and seats firmly away, so that works out quite nicely. Also up top is our USB port, so you'd plug in here for your purposes of connecting to a computer so that you can do your FPV simulators or other simulators. Maybe you use a flight simulator of another sort. We've also got our SD card, which it does come with. We've got our headphone jack as well as our trainer port. All pretty traditional standard stuff, but do note that that USB port up there is USB-C, which it does come with. So no worries as far as not having a USB-C cable. As we flip it over here and we look at the back, you can see we've got a module here in the back. Obviously, you could use some other sort of module if you buy the Express LRS edition and maybe later on you want to try Crossfire, or you're transitioning from Crossfire to Express LRS, or you're transitioning from FrSky, what have you. If you have a module that you want to use and it's a nano or the smaller size module, that would clip in right here, and it's got this little cover to put on that space if you're not using it. Also here on the back are 2 more momentary switches. Not necessarily useful for me. I have a difficult time reaching these. But if you're looking for something a little extra, you're looking for 1 more momentary switch, it's right here. Also on the back, these screws. These screws allow you to change the centering, so you can actually go from mode 1 to mode 2 or mode 3 to change which stick is centered. It also allows you to change your spring tension, which is terribly handy. I love the fact that we've gotten to the point in this hobby where we can stop opening our brand new radios to adjust spring tensions. That's so awesome. And I'm thankful that this radio has it as well. So we can use those screws, we turn them in order to adjust our spring tension or our centering. Also around here on the sides, each side has these 2 holes. And you could use those holes to connect some sort of accessory. Maybe it's a one-sided accessory, or maybe it creates some sort of bracket so you could have an FPV screen over the top. Both sides do have those screw holes, so you could use that as your will. As we're looking here in the front and the large screen, of course, we'll turn that on here in a minute. We've got the Radiomaster logo, the Zorro printed over the top of the speaker grill. We've got our traditional trim buttons here in the center. We've got a loop for our lanyard if you do use a neck strap. We've got our power button, and then we've got our traditional items that we use to drive the menuing system within the radio. And it does facilitate the use of a metal roller wheel, which I have gotten more and more used to. Initially, when I first started with the Tango 2, I kind of struggled with that. Although the Tango 2 is kind of it feels like that roller is tapered. Maybe that is what has caused me a little bit of an issue with that. But let's roll on down to the bottom so we can take a look at the bottom. We'll talk about these brackets here that you can hook stuff to. So on the bottom we have our USB-C port for charging. Again, it comes with a USB-C cable, so no worries there. And it also has this balance port for a 2S battery. So you can connect a 2S battery directly to this. 2S only. Or if you have a pack that uses 18650 cells, these 18650 cells, and Radiomaster makes a 5000 milliamp 2S version. This pack would fit neatly down in here, and then you use 2 Velcro straps to keep it attached to that area. So if you wanted some longer battery life, or you just wanted to extend your flying session, 18650 pack, whether you have to buy the Radiomaster one or not, I don't think so. It just can't be a bulky pack because of the size. It's not going to fit every 18650 pack that's out there. Or you can buy this extension cable, which obviously here on the end where it is an XT30, it reminds you 2S only. So if you plug in at a 3-4S and plug this in, bad things are going to happen. But this cable will allow you to have a battery, say, in your pocket like we might with our goggles, in order to save the internal battery life or to just extend your flying session. It also comes with this bracket that clips into those other bracket spaces in order to be able to hold this cable in place so it doesn't pull loose on you, which I think was necessary and a good thing that they thought of that and they have included it, because as you can see, the cable will go right down in that little V and it creates tension on the cable, so it shouldn't pull that out unless the tension got really fairly extreme. But that is an optional thing. It does not come with that. If I didn't mention it already, there is a case that's available to this, and I presume that that case is going to be well formed to the shape of this radio. So if you are someone who regularly travels, that case might be of interest to make sure you protect your radio. I think most of us, because we touch this and the goggles so much when we're having fun, they become kind of protected items. So maybe getting that case, if it's not too expensive, it might be a good idea. Let's go back to the back and get to the biggest drawback that I think most people aren't going to like, and that is the battery. So we pop off the grips, which comes off nice and easily, and we can see there that that is an 18350. 18650 next to it, 18350 inside of it. Now, Radiomaster did, when they sent these out, they did say the reason why they did that is they wanted to keep the radio at this size. They didn't want it getting bigger. So they added, or they thought to add, the extra availability of being able to plug in a 2S battery here at the lowest part to supplement any battery shortage you might because of an 18350 battery, which we've got 2 of them, 1 in each handle, and the handles do come off fairly easily and they slide right back on, and they are rubberized, so they do grip in your hands. And as we already saw in my flying, that I just kind of let the radio rest in my hands. I don't like to grip. I don't like to be tense when I'm flying. I like to relax. So having that textured rubber back here is really, really handy. As a matter of fact, on some of my older radios, I used to add some neoprene padding to them in order to create that sort of textured feel, that security that I felt I needed. Now we get to the part about the gimbals. So you get a sense, hopefully, through as much as we can through this format, what it's like to hold the radio and whether this radio might be for you. Now, the next most sensitive item when it comes to radios is probably the gimbals. These are Hall sensor gimbals, which are very smooth. They're very nice. You can adjust the stick travel with these screws at the top and the bottom. So that's great. So if you want a shorter stick throw, maybe if you're a racer, do racers use shorter stick throw? I just don't know those scenarios where someone might use a shorter stick throw. That seems peculiar to me. I suspect it would be maybe something about hand size. That's just a guess. But you can adjust those as well as the screws in the back for the spring tension, which I've mentioned probably more than a couple of times. You can adjust the stick ends up and down, and I've made that adjustment for my comfort level. And, you know, they feel real good. One of the things that I'm sensitive to is the centering. If the centering is real heavy, which is oftentimes just tied to your spring tension, I find that I'm less smooth and less comfortable. So that's one of the things I'm always looking for in gimbals, is that centering smooth. Can I move fluidly through the center so that I'm not, you know, bumping around and causing my flight to kind of veer off course. But they are smaller gimbals than you might find on other radios, and that is to be expected with a gamepad style radio, but something you want to keep in mind. Let's go ahead and let's turn it on so you can hear the speaker real quick.
Welcome to Edge TX.
So yeah, they come stock with Edge TX. And I think that's pretty awesome. I've got Edge TX on one of my 2 T-Lights. So I like the fact that Edge TX is out there and they're pushing the envelope. They're pushing OpenTX to move faster. And if they won't move faster, Edge TX is going to do it. So when it comes to feature sets or listening to the community and evolving, Edge TX, it is compatible with OpenTX. So if you want to go OpenTX route, you can. but it comes with Edge TX, and I'm told they're all coming with Edge TX. So don't be surprised. You can see here the screen brightness. I'm just going to move the sticks around here a little bit so you get an idea for how motion on the screen is handled. Sometimes some feel that can give you an idea of the quality of the screen, which I wouldn't say one way or another. I've never studied these things. I just want to be able to see them. And for someone with less than 20/20 vision, the screen size is nice. I won't argue with having a nice screen on there in order to be able to see it. Now, I'm changing models quite often, so when it comes to screens, I have a different use case. You might only need to see the screen once to set up your one model, and you do binding through that model, and you'll only look at it at those binding. I'm always using different models, not always, but I'm binding several different models, so I tend to use my screen a little bit more. So a big screen might not be important to you. That's just something you have to decide. I'm not going to dive deep into Edge TX or ExpressLRS. There are many videos on YouTube about that stuff. But I do want to show you one feature that I think is fun and could be potentially useful. Let's go into our SysTools down here. Now note that I've got two ExpressLRS Lua scripts on here. We've got number 3, which is just labeled ELRS, and I've got number 4, ExpressLRS. I believe number 3 is the version 1 and doesn't work on this radio. So I will, after this review, delete that. So there's no point in that being on there because this does come with ExpressLRS version 2. So I definitely don't need that ELRS number 3 on there. So let's go into number 4. It's going to do its thing, and you can kind of see the menuing system and how things work. That's all, ExpressLRS stuff. You can go into the TX power. A lot of people want to see that because this is running at a maximum of 250 milliwatts. If I hit the scroll wheel and try to move it up, it doesn't. I can move it down. A word about the milliwatt. If you want to see what's capable of ExpressLRS as far as distance go, I'll link Wesley Vardy's video in doing ExpressLRS down below. Nearly all of us who fly FPV, ExpressLRS is going to give you more penetration and more range than you're needing. Now, if you don't think that's the case, then maybe you're going to need to get a 500 milliwatt or a 1 watt module. I think it's overkill by a long ways, but if you know what you need or you need that assurance, then you need to know this is 250 milliwatts, which is, with ExpressLRS, a lot of range and a lot of penetration. And especially if you're wearing goggles, your video is going to go out before ExpressLRS is going to go out. So most of you, when you hear that 250 milliwatts, you can relax just fine. You got more than you'll ever need. And of course, some people are running dynamic, which is a nice little feature in version 2 of ExpressLRS. But the reason why I draw you in here is right here, BLE joystick. Now that is Bluetooth, and I've already tested this out, but if we press the scroll wheel down, we get this little enable. Yes, let's go ahead and enable it. And we get the little spinning X that's supposed to indicate a star that it's running. And I did test this on my computer, and it bound up just fine to the Bluetooth on my computer. Unfortunately, the computer simulators that I use for FPV, which one of it is TinyWhoop Go, does not recognize this radio. I was able to get it to kind of work. It didn't work great, so we probably need an update on our simulators. All of them might not be that way, but TinyWhoop Go is the one that I tend to go to most often, and that one does definitely need an update for this radio to work normally. But I think that's a pretty cool feature, although you should know that because you're going over Bluetooth, there is potential that there could be some disconnect between your stick movement and the movement on screen. Something that you'll have to test out. If you're an accomplished pilot, you're probably going to notice it if it's there. If you're not an accomplished pilot, maybe you're just starting, you probably won't notice. But it is awful convenient. Of course, if you do notice, we've got the USB port right up top. Plug it into your USB cable, your computer, then that all goes away. But that was the main feature that I wanted to make sure I pointed out with the ExpressLRS. I don't think you'll find that feature in the versions that don't have ExpressLRS. So, something to note there. As far as the buttons and the layouts of everything, I think they're all pretty easy to read, pretty easy to feel. I didn't have any troubles navigating anything. They all make sense. They're clearly labeled. They're actually reasonably easy to see, even though it doesn't have like a text color on the buttons. You know, you've got your model button, your sys button, you've got your page forward, page back, your return. You can see these things on there, and if you can't see them clearly, if you get a little bit of an angle at it, the letters will kind of pop off because they are kind of indented into the buttons. One of the things that shocked me about this radio was the price. The ExpressLRS edition, the one I have here, is $99. When I pulled it out of the box, I didn't think this would be a good price. I thought was going to be $129. That's just me. Maybe I'm way off as far as market value goes. But for the way this feels, again, it feels constructed very similarly to an FrSky radio, which I think most of us in this hobby would say FrSky makes a good quality radio. So Radiomaster's done a nice job with this radio and making it feel like a hobby grade or a premium grade radio. It doesn't feel like a toy. It doesn't feel like it's fragile. And it's $99. But if the ExpressLRS edition isn't the one you're looking for, need to hit the website, check out what the price of the one that you want if you are interested in this product. Which, if you like gamepad style radios, I fully support gamepad style radios and pinching, or hybrid pinching, whatever you want to call what I do. And I definitely am big on ExpressLRS. I think ExpressLRS solves a lot of problems, specifically in micros and all-in-one boards. I'm all about ExpressLRS. If you go to the ExpressLRS donation page, you will find my name there. So the last question some of you might be asking is, am I switching? And in this moment, yeah, I think so. Now, of course, I can't switch fully because this is ExpressLRS only. I could add a module to the back, and then I could transition my quads over. So for the time being, the stuff that I have bound up to my Jumper T-Lite will stay Jumper T-Lite. And then I'll be transitioning more and more and more over to this Zorro radio because I do like it. I feel comfortable with it. I think the construction's quality. I think it's going to serve me very, very well. And at $99, it might serve you pretty well too. And if you are interested, there'll be links down in the video description to resellers who are selling this. You might want to take a look at the accessories for additional long session battery life, as well as the case. Radiomaster, I sure would like a case. I could probably buy one, though, too. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise, please let me know in the comment section below. I appreciate your time, and thanks for watching.